Welcome to Chamber Exchange, the TV show. My name is Tim Murray, President and CEO of the Worcester Regional Chamber of Commerce. And Chamber Exchange, the TV show, is an opportunity for us to bring on chamber member businesses or organizations in the region that are making a difference and having impact. Our show is brought to you by our sponsors, which is Bank Hometown and St. Vincent Hospital. And pleased to have with us Leah Bradley, who is the Executive Director of the Central Mass Housing Alliance.
Great. Nice to be back. Thank you.
Yeah, I was going to say, you've been here a couple of times, and we are usually this time of year when the Central Mass Housing Alliance runs their annual walk. But maybe for our viewers who didn't watch those episodes or somehow missed the previous interviews, maybe you could share with our viewers a little bit about the mission of the Central Mass Housing Alliance.
Sure. So Central Mass Housing Alliance, we're a housing organization, so we provide prevention services to keep families and in their homes to make sure they don't experience homelessness. We also have family shelters where we provide over 200 units of shelter to families throughout Worcester and Leicester. And we also run what we call the continuum of care. It's a planning process to end homelessness throughout Worcester County. So we're looking at housing, building more housing so that we can prevent homelessness, which is really the one prevention activity, is to be able to have more housing so folks don't experience homelessness, all the way through providing services to folks who are experiencing homelessness.
Yeah, and unfortunately, this is a challenge in regions across the country, each probably with their own nuances in terms of housing stock and challenges. But here in Central Massachusetts, there is new housing coming online. Some of it is market rate or high end. Some of it's affordable. But even with those significant increases, there's still a challenge.
Yeah, what we see is that the two indicators of an increase in homelessness is a low vacancy rate, and so there's not enough housing that's available, and then the high median rent. And usually the vacancy rate is really what causes the part of the cause to the increase in rents. And so we're seeing that across the state, and especially in Worcester, where we have really low vacancy rates. And so we have to build housing at a higher level. So, really getting more housing into each of our communities, not just Worcester, but our surrounding communities. In Austin, recently they built 50,000 units of housing, and their rents went down 22%. So it shows that if you build more housing, Austin, Texas, yeah. So just showing that it's when we build more housing and we have more supply, it's gonna impact the overall rental market too.
Right. And Worcester, as you said, has a lower vacancy rate than kind of other communities, and is that somewhat reflective in the Central Mass region as well?
Yeah, most of the communities have a low, so 5% is a healthy vacancy rate. Most of the communities have 3% or lower. And so really what we're trying to promote as well is to have more housing built, and some of that's around the permitting and some of the rules that we have around being able to build. So places like Texas that I had mentioned, it's easier to build housing, and so figuring out with the communities and with the state and the local governments, how do we streamline the permitting process and make it easier for folks to build in those communities.
Yeah, and also think about making sure policymakers are thinking twice before they're adding new requirements to the cost of construction.
Yep.
I just left a meeting where that came up as well. So it's kind of that challenge. And I thought I read something recently that rent increases are slowing a little bit compared to maybe some of the trends we've seen over the last 5 to 6 years. But that in and of itself doesn't abate the problem if we're not building significant numbers of new units. And I guess, are there any trends at the moment? There's families, seniors, you're on this in real time. What's the state of play at the moment? So
what we're seeing, a lot of the folks who would normally move into home ownership are no longer able to do that because the prices are so high, or interest rates are so high. So it's really squeezing the market. So the folks the natural ecosystem for housing is disrupted because folks aren't moving into home ownership, which is keeping them in rental housing, and we still aren't building enough rental housing. And so it's really creating a situation where the most vulnerable are the ones who are most at risk for homelessness. We're seeing a trend in working families, so families that have two-parent households and are working that are no longer able to afford rent. And the biggest population we're seeing are seniors. Seniors, homeowners who aren't able to afford to be able to pay for the repairs in their units, and so they get to a point where they can no longer live in those units, which is devastating to the folks that are going into the cities and the municipalities don't want to condemn units, but at some point they're not livable anymore. And if we can we can provide the repairs before it gets to a point where they're just the unit is beyond repair. That would be really helpful for the seniors. And the other population we're seeing are seniors who are on a fixed income and just can't afford rent anymore. The rents are going up a lot. They're increasing more than what folks' income is increasing.
So these may be seniors in market rate housing that maybe are not eligible or don't know if, or haven't applied for some level of assistance, and even if there is, it's probably waiting lists.
Yeah, there's waiting lists, and it's really in the surrounding communities. We're seeing a lot more growth in the senior folks that they're living in their vehicles, which is something that we hadn't seen before, where most of the time folks go to a shelter or they find services, and that population is really living in their cars in some of the surrounding communities. They lived in that
Leah,
community.
when you say surrounding communities, outside of Worcester, suburban towns,
absolutely,
some of the smaller cities.
Yeah, so all the municipalities, so we've seen an increase in the number of municipalities that are reporting to us that they're seeing folks who are experiencing homelessness. And usually those communities take care of themselves. They're really tight-knit communities, especially some of the rural. So seeing that increase in the smaller communities is really concerning to us, because it means that it's really getting to be a bigger problem, and it's going to grow.
Yeah, and Worcester County really is a microcosm of the state in some ways. Certainly there's, Worcester, there's Fitchburg, Leominster, Gardner, Southbridge. But then you've got your traditional suburban communities, and then a lot of rural communities.
Right, exactly. Like the Brookfields, we've seen a rise in. We've been working with Spencer and Webster. We're seeing more folks in Sturbridge. In the northern part of the county, we're seeing some folks in Gardner and Athol. I mean, those are areas that we just haven't seen the same numbers that we're seeing now.
Right. Well, on a positive note,
yes.
This time of year, the Central Mass Housing Alliance runs its annual walk, and it got an anniversary, right?
We do, yes. It's our 40th annual Walk for the Homeless. It's on Sunday, May 18th. It's at Elm Park, and registration starts at noon, and it's a 5K. We have two sponsors. We have our diamond sponsor, which is MLS PIN, and we also have Webster 5. That's a major sponsor for us this year. We're grateful to them, and you all have sponsored as well.
Yeah, the Chamber, we've been committed to the housing issue for a long time. Our employers want talented people, but they got to have a place to live.
Absolutely.
So whether it be market rate, affordable housing, workforce housing, we want to see more of that built, because puts people to work, good jobs in the construction trades, and
Agreed.
Activates local supply chains.
The lack of housing is really impacting all industries, because they can't find the employees for it, because they can't afford to live here. So, your hospitals, the emergency departments, some of that's because they can't find enough employees and workers, because they can't find housing. Same thing with, even the restaurants that have been closing. You probably noticed that a lot of the restaurants aren't open as many days a week, which impacts folks' ability to go out and in the evenings and things. And so everybody's seeing it. And so for our walk, it's an awareness campaign, and it's also a fundraiser for us. You can go to walkforthehomeless.org, where you can donate, or you can sign up to be a team captain or sign up for the walk. And what we use those dollars for is really the emergent needs of folks. So they don't have to wait to be eligible for a benefit. We paid for storage units for seniors. There was a senior couple that was going to their storage unit was going to go up for auction, and they had a unit the next day. And so we were able to pay for that, so that they didn't lose all their belongings while they were getting into housing too.
So you rely on funding from state, local, federal government, but also private fundraising efforts. In this annual walk, 40th annual walk, I think it was Bishop Riley and Bernie Rotman were the longtime co-chairs of this. But it's May 18th. Registration from noon to 1:30 is the walk. Walk begins at 2, so people can register from noon to 1:30. Walk begins at 2 at Elm Park. And you mentioned the sponsors are Webster 5 Bank.
Yep.
And MLS PIN. What is MLS PIN?
So it's realty.
Realty.
Yes.
Okay. And if people want to learn on how to sponsor, contribute, sign up, is there a website, a place they can go?
Walkforthehomeless.org. So they can go to the website, and there's a donate button there, and they can also read all about how to be a sponsor, or how to become a team captain and have a team that walks. And there's some incentives for folks who raise a certain dollar amount, and those are all on our website, so they can take a look and see how they can help.
Good stuff. And for people, walks in Worcester, but your organization is throughout Worcester County and the region.
Yes, for sure.
So Central Mass Housing Alliance, Worcester County. So Leah Bradley, Executive Director, thanks for the great work that you and your team do. and we're happy to be able to work with you.
Great. Thanks for having us, and thanks for your sponsorship. We appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Great.
Stay with us. We're going to come back for our next segment of Chamber Exchange.
These days, you've got your hands full in life. That's why we help you bank simply and securely with tools like Face ID and Touch ID. It's why we make it easy to make purchases on the go and get cash back while you're at it. Why we help you quickly deposit checks wherever you are. And it's why we lend a hand with sending and receiving money right from your phone. So even when you're on the move, you can manage your finances. Bank Hometown. Unlock your potential.